A group of bikers surrounded an elderly veteran in an abandoned parking lot, mocking his uniform and shouting insults. The veteran remained calm, reaching for his phone. "Who's he gonna call?" they sneered. But when his call connected, the bikers' smug faces quickly twisted into panic, and they scrambled to flee. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across an empty parking lot on the outskirts of town. It was a quiet evening, the kind when most people are heading home to be with their families. But for Thomas Reynolds, a 67-year-old war veteran, peace was a distant memory. After years of serving his country and sacrificing everything for the freedom of others, he now lived a quiet life, haunted by memories of the battlefield. Thomas wasn't the type to seek trouble, but on this particular evening, trouble found him. As he parked his old pickup truck and stepped out, 3 bikers roared into the lot, their motorcycles echoing off the concrete walls. They weren't locals. Thomas could tell by the way they carried themselves. Leather jackets, unshaven faces, and the kind of swagger that came with looking for trouble. "Hey, old man," one of them shouted, revving his engine before cutting it off. "Nice uniform. You still playing soldier?" Thomas didn't flinch. He stood tall, his back straight despite the ache in his bones. He was dressed in a modest button-up shirt, but the dog tags around his neck and the military pin on his collar gave him away. Another biker dismounted his bike and walked closer, grinning smugly. "Didn't think we'd run into a hero today," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "What war was it? World War I?" The group of bikers burst out laughing, circling Thomas like wolves hunting prey. They pushed closer, their mocking words growing louder and more offensive. But Thomas didn't say a word. Instead, he calmly reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. His hands were steady despite the tension hanging in the air. He dialed a number and brought the phone to his ear, ignoring the jeers from the bikers. "Oh, look! He's calling his buddies," one biker sneered. "Gonna bring the whole retirement home down on us?" The laughter echoed through the lot. But the moment Thomas spoke into the phone, the mood shifted. The smile disappeared from the bikers' faces. Whatever he said made them stop in their tracks, their bravado melting away into unease. What they didn't know was that Thomas wasn't calling for help. He was calling someone they'd never expect. The bikers exchanged amused glances as Thomas stood there, phone pressed to his ear. They weren't worried, just the opposite. They thought they had the upper hand. After all, what could one old man do against 3 tough bikers on roaring motorcycles? "Come on, Grandpa," the leader taunted, a sneer curling his lips. "Who are you calling? The cops? Or maybe your war buddies? Hate to break it to you, but they're probably all dead by now." The other 2 burst out laughing. But Thomas ignored them. His face remained calm and composed as he spoke into the phone. His words were short and measured, his voice low but steady. He didn't yell, he didn't beg, and he definitely didn't sound scared. The bikers leaned in closer, curious but still cocky. "Yeah," Thomas said quietly into the phone. "It's me. I've got a little situation here. Could use some backup. You know the place." He ended the call and slipped the phone back into his pocket, his expression unchanged. The leader of the bikers squinted at him. "Backup, huh?" He gestured around the empty lot. "Doesn't look like anyone's coming, old man. It's just you and us." The second biker chuckled. "Maybe he's calling the retirement home. Gonna get the senior squad out here with their walkers and canes." Thomas didn't react. He simply stood there, hands at his sides, watching them with a steady gaze that made the bikers feel unsettled. The leader tried to shake it off. "All right, enough of this. Let's teach him a lesson." The second biker stepped forward, cracking his knuckles. "Let's see if you can still stand tall after we knock you down." As they closed in, Thomas finally spoke. "You boys really think you're tough, don't you?" His voice was calm, almost conversational. The leader smirked. "We know we are." Thomas nodded slowly. "I've seen tough men before. I fought beside them. Men who didn't flinch under enemy fire. Men who walked through hell and came out the other side. You?" He glanced at the bikers, his gaze piercing. "You're not tough. You're bullies." That struck a nerve. The bikers' cocky grins faltered, replaced by annoyance. "Enough talking," the leader snapped. "Let's—" Before he could finish, the distant roar of engines echoed through the lot. Not one or two engines, but dozens. The bikers turned, their heads snapping toward the sound. Their smug expressions quickly faded as they saw a convoy of motorcycles approaching, their headlights cutting through the dusk. Who the hell are they?" the second biker muttered, his bravado slipping away. Thomas stood still, watching the bikers' reactions. "That," he said, tilting his head toward the incoming riders. "That's my backup." The convoy rolled into the parking lot, engines rumbling like a thunderstorm. The bikers counted at least 20 motorcycles, each one ridden by a man or woman in black leather jackets. But these weren't just any bikers. They were part of a veteran biker club known as the Patriot Riders. The leader of the bikers took a step back, his confidence crumbling. "No way." The Patriot Riders dismounted their bikes in perfect synchronization. They were older, but they carried themselves with the kind of authority and confidence that only came from years of experience. They weren't just bikers, they were former soldiers, men and women who had fought for their country and knew how to handle trouble. One of the Patriot Riders, a tall man with a beard streaked with gray, approached Thomas and gave him a firm handshake. "Good to see you, Sergeant." Thomas nodded. "Good to see you too, Captain." The bearded man turned to the trio of bikers. His eyes narrowed and his voice dropped to a dangerous tone. "We heard there was a problem." The leader of the bikers tried to put on a brave face. "Hey, look, we don't want any trouble. We were just messing around. No harm done, right?" The captain stepped closer, his gaze never leaving the bikers. "No harm done? You think harassing a veteran is just messing around? You've got a lot to learn about respect." The second biker stammered, We didn't know he was one of you." Thomas finally spoke again, his voice steady. "It doesn't matter who I am. You don't treat anyone the way you treated me. But you made a mistake. You picked the wrong person to bully." The captain crossed his arms. "Here's how this is going to go. You're going to apologize to Sergeant Reynolds right now, and then you're going to get on your bikes and never show your faces around here again." The bikers hesitated, glancing at each other. The leader tried to hold on to some shred of dignity. "And what if we don't?" The captain smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. "Then you'll find out what it's like to be outnumbered. And trust me, we're not just bikers. We're veterans. We've faced worse than you." The silence stretched out for a long moment. Finally, the leader of the bikers dropped his gaze. "All right, we're sorry. We didn't mean any harm." Thomas raised an eyebrow. "Say it like you mean it." The leader sighed, his shoulders slumping. "I'm sorry, sir. It won't happen again." Thomas nodded. "Good, now go." The bikers hurried back to their motorcycles, their earlier confidence completely gone. They started their engines and peeled out of the parking lot, leaving behind nothing but the echo of their tires on the pavement. As they disappeared into the distance, the captain turned back to Thomas. "You all right, Sergeant?" Thomas smiled faintly. "I'm all right. Thanks for coming." The captain clapped him on the shoulder. "We've always got your back. You know that." Thomas nodded, grateful. "I know, and I'll always have yours." The Patriot Riders lingered for a few more minutes, making sure the troublemakers were truly gone. Then they mounted their bikes and prepared to ride out. Before they left, the captain gave Thomas a final nod. "If they come back, you know who to call." Thomas chuckled. "I doubt they'll be back." As the Patriot Riders roared out of the parking lot, Thomas stood there for a moment, watching them go. He felt a sense of peace wash over him. He wasn't alone. And those bikers, they learned a lesson they'd never forget. Thomas stood quietly in the parking lot, watching the last of the Patriot Riders disappear down the road, their engines fading into the distance. The silence that followed was peaceful, a stark contrast to the tense confrontation just moments ago. He glanced down at the phone in his hand and smiled faintly. It wasn't the first time he'd called on his brothers in arms, and it likely wouldn't be the last. There was something unbreakable about the bond between those who had served. It didn't matter how many years had passed or how far apart they lived. When one of them needed help, the others would always come. As Thomas climbed back into his truck, he thought about the bikers. He didn't hate them. In fact, he hoped they'd learned something important that day: respect. It wasn't about fear or intimidation. It was about recognizing that everyone has a story, a past, and battles they've fought, some visible, others hidden deep inside. The world could use more respect, more kindness. As he drove away, Thomas felt a renewed sense of purpose. His military service might have ended years ago, but his mission wasn't over. He knew there were still people out there who needed to hear stories like his, stories of standing up for what's right, of not backing down in the face of bullies, and of the power of true brotherhood. That's why stories like this need to be shared. Did this story resonate with you? It's more than just a tale of a veteran standing up to bullies. It's a reminder that respect and courage never go out of style. If you believe in standing up for those who've served, if you believe in the power of unity and loyalty, then share this story. Let others know that the bonds forged in service can't be broken, and that bullies always back down when they face real strength. Hit the like button to honor veterans around the world. Leave a comment if you've ever witnessed someone standing up to injustice, and tell us your story. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories that inspire and remind us all of what really matters: respect, loyalty, and standing up for what's right. Together, we can spread a message that the world needs to hear. Let's make sure no veteran ever feels alone again.